The stars were quiet. Space was calm. But that calm was a lie. Deep in a forgotten part of the galaxy, a small alien colony named Zorith was in danger. Zorithians were peaceful people. They lived in harmony, growing their food, building homes of crystal, and sharing stories under the twin moons. They had no armies, no weapons. They believed peace was enough. But peace could not stop what was coming. One cold night, black ships appeared in the sky. They made no sound, no warnings. They simply came and started to destroy. These were not pirates. These were not raiders. They were something worse, something ancient and full of hunger. The Zorithians called them the Black Swarm. The swarm didn't talk. They didn't ask for surrender. They just attacked. Buildings melted. Forests burned. The ground cracked as drills from orbit reached into the planet's core. Zorith's leaders, shocked and afraid, sent a signal into the stars. A call for help. It was short and simple. "This is Zorith. We are under attack. Please, anyone, help us." The signal flew into space, passing through systems, reaching powerful empires. Great alien nations received it. They had armies, fleets, technology. But when they heard the word Black Swarm, they turned away. "It is not our problem," said the Drevlon Empire. "Zorith is too far," said the Tikar Alliance. "We cannot win against the swarm," whispered the Xarn Dominion. One by one, every species refused to help. The signal kept traveling, until it reached a small blue planet on the edge of known space, Earth. In a command room aboard the human starship Aegis Dawn, Captain Raina Cole stood quietly as the signal played. Static crackled, followed by broken words, screams, and then silence. Her crew watched her, waiting for orders. Lieutenant Malik, the ship's engineer, frowned. "It's bad. Real bad." Raina didn't speak right away. She looked out at the stars. Then she turned. "Where are the others?" she asked. Lieutenant Kara replied, "We tracked the signal. It passed through 15 systems. No one responded." "No one?" Raina asked again, softer this time. Kara nodded. Not a single ship moved. Raina clenched her jaw. "Cowards." Malik shrugged. "Captain, it's the swarm. No one wants to face them." "But someone has to," Raina said. "We can't just ignore this." "We're not a warship," Kara reminded her. "We're an exploration vessel. We don't have the firepower." Raina nodded. She knew all this. But still, she couldn't shake the feeling in her chest. The tightness, the heat. She thought of Earth's history. Of times when humanity had been alone and afraid, but still chose to fight. They had always stood up when others backed down. "Play the signal again," Raina ordered. The crew listened once more. This time, the fear in the alien voices felt stronger. This time, Raina saw images in her mind. Families hiding, children crying, homes burning. She couldn't walk away. "I'm making a decision," she said at last. "We're going to Zorith." The room went silent. "Captain, Earth Command hasn't approved that," Malik said carefully. "I'm not waiting for a green light," Raina replied. "This is why we're out here. To make a difference. To stand when no one else will." The crew looked at one another. No one spoke. Then Kara nodded slowly. "I'm in." Malik sighed, then smiled. "Let's go save some aliens." Raina smiled too. "Good. Prepare for jump. Set course for Zorith." As the engines powered up, Raina opened a message log. She recorded a short note for Earth Command. "To Central Command. We have received a distress signal from the Zorith colony. All other powers ignored it. We're moving in. We will do what others would not, because we are human, and we do not run from those in need." She sent the message and leaned back in her chair. Outside the ship, the stars began to shift as they prepared for faster-than-light travel. Raina whispered to herself, "Let's hope we're not too late." In the distance, Zorith still burned. The Black Swarm continued its silent destruction. But far away, hope was coming. A single human ship, outnumbered and outgunned, had decided to answer the call. And that single choice would change the galaxy. The stars stretched around the Aegis Dawn as it moved through faster-than-light space. Inside the ship, there was silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy silence before a storm. Captain Raina Cole sat at the command chair, eyes on the screen. Her crew worked quietly. No one smiled. No one joked. They were all thinking the same thing. They were going to face the Black Swarm, alone. "We'll reach Zorith in 13 hours, Lieutenant Kara said, her voice low. Raina nodded. "Any updates on the distress signal?" Kara shook her head. "No, the signal has stopped. Either their power failed, or they're gone." Raina didn't respond. She simply looked down at the table in front of her. A map of the galaxy glowed there, with Zorith marked in red. Around it were dozens of other systems, all silent, all refusing to help. Malik, the engineer, walked in holding a datapad. "I boosted the shields and added 2 emergency thrusters. We might need to run if it gets bad." "Good work," Raina said. He paused, then added, "But let's be honest, we're not ready for this kind of fight." "I know," she said. "Then why are we going?" Raina looked at him. Her voice was calm, but full of something deep, something human. "Because no one else is. That's all the reason I need." Malik stared at her, then gave a small nod. "All right. Then let's at least try to survive it." Back on Earth, far away from the Aegis Dawn, the Human Council met in a tall glass building. News of Raina's decision had reached them. They were not happy. "She acted without orders," said one general. "This is reckless." "She took a ship and crew into enemy territory," said another. "For what? An alien colony?" The Prime Minister of Earth sat at the head of the table. Her name was Ilara Niven. She had been a soldier once. She watched the news on a screen, the Zorith signal, the silence from other species, the launch of Aegis Dawn. "She acted with heart," Ilara said quietly. "Something we used to admire." "But what if she fails?" asked an admiral. "Then let the galaxy see that we tried," Ilara replied. "Let them see that humans don't run." The room fell silent. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, the crew gathered in the main briefing room. It was time to prepare. Kara opened a hologram of Zorith. "From what we know, the swarm targets energy centers first. They destroy communications, then begin drilling into the core. If we're lucky, some survivors are hiding underground." Malik added, "Our weapons won't stop them, not for long. But we can slow them down." Raina stood in front of her crew. "We are not here to win a war. We are here to save lives. We'll land fast, locate survivors, and get them off the planet." "And if we can't?" someone asked. Raina looked each crew member in the eye. "Then we die trying." No one spoke. Then Kara raised her hand. "I'm in." Malik followed. "Me too." One by one the others agreed. No one left. No one backed out. Even though they were afraid, they stood together. That was the human way. Later, Raina sat alone in her quarters. She stared at a small photo, her family on Earth, her parents smiling, her sister holding a dog. She missed them. She wondered if she'd ever see them again. Then she heard a knock. Malik stepped in. "You okay?" he asked. Raina smiled a little. "Just thinking." "You think this is a suicide mission?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I think this is the right thing to do." Malik nodded. "Then I'm glad we're doing it together." Raina looked at him. "Thanks, Malik." He smiled and left. 12 hours later, the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The planet Zorith appeared before them. It looked wounded. Giant holes in the surface. Fires burning. The air full of smoke and ash. Kara scanned the surface. "I'm picking up weak life signs. Not many. But they're there." Raina stood tall. "All right, let's get them." She looked around the bridge. Her crew was ready. They were scared, but they were ready. Reyna gave the order. Prepare for descent. The ship tilted forward, heading straight into danger. Straight into fire. Straight into history. As the ship moved closer to the broken planet, Reyna whispered just loud enough for herself to hear. We are human, and we stand. The Aegis Dawn descended toward the surface of Zorith, cutting through the smoky atmosphere. Outside, the sky was a mixture of dark clouds and flickering red light, as fires still burned across the planet. The ship's engines rumbled as they fought against the planet's gravity, slowing their descent. Captain Reyna Cole stood at the front of the bridge, watching the planet below. The tension was thick, like a storm waiting to break. She could feel the weight of every second. This was it. No turning back. We're entering the atmosphere, Kara said, her voice calm but tight with pressure. We'll be on the ground in less than 5 minutes. Reyna nodded. Malik, how's our landing gear? Everything's green, Malik replied. He adjusted the controls. Shields are holding, but we might take some damage on the way down. Just make sure we land on our feet, Reyna said. Her eyes stayed focused on the view screen. She could see the blackened surface of Zorith below, like a scar on the face of the planet. There's no telling how much of the colony is left, Kara added. If we get there too late? Reyna turned to face her. We won't be too late. We won't leave anyone behind. Kara nodded, but Reyna saw the uncertainty in her eyes. The crew was scared. It was hard not to be. They were heading into the unknown, into the heart of destruction. But Reyna also saw something else in their eyes, determination. They were scared, yes, but they weren't backing down. The ship shook as they entered the thick clouds, turbulence rattling the walls. The rumble of the engines grew louder as the Aegis Dawn fought to stay stable. We're passing through the clouds, Kara said. Get ready for the landing. Suddenly, a warning light flashed. The ground was coming up fast. Too fast. Thrusters, Malik shouted. We need to slow down now. Reyna's heart raced, but she stayed calm. Pull up. Now. Malik hit a series of buttons, and the thrusters fired, pushing the ship upward. For a moment, it felt like they were climbing, but then the ship jerked sideways. The ground was too close. Shields at 50%. Malik yelled. I can't hold this angle much longer. Reyna's fingers tightened around the armrests. Just get us down. We need to land. Now. With a final roar, the ship hit the ground with a loud, bone-jarring crash. The ship slid for a moment, sparks flying from the underside, before it came to a halt, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. The bridge was silent. We're down, Malik said, his voice shaky. Reyna let out her breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Everyone all right? We're good, Kara said, though her voice was slightly strained. Malik nodded. No serious damage. We'll need some repairs, but we're good to go. Reyna stood, looking at the crew. All right, we don't have much time. Gather your gear. We're going to find survivors. The crew moved quickly, grabbing their equipment, preparing for whatever they would face on the surface. Reyna checked her own gear, her gun, her communicator, and a small med kit, before giving the order to move out. Outside the ship, the scene was worse than any of them had expected. The landscape was a wasteland. Buildings that had once been beautiful crystalline structures now lay in ruins. Ash filled the air, and the sky above was choked with smoke. There was no sign of life, no people, no movement. Only the ruins of a once thriving colony. The Aegis Dawn's hatch opened with a hiss, and the crew stepped out onto the scorched ground. The heat was overwhelming. The planet felt like it was still burning from the inside out. Reyna looked around. Stay sharp. There could be survivors, but we also don't know what's still here. They moved in a tight formation, walking cautiously toward the nearest building. The ground was cracked beneath their boots, and the air smelled of burnt metal and something wrong. As they moved closer to the ruins, Reyna noticed something. Small shapes were moving in the distance, shadows in the smoke. She froze, holding up her hand to signal for everyone to stop. Do you see that? Reyna whispered. Kara squinted, trying to make out the figures. People. I think they're running. They're alive, Malik said, a tone of disbelief in his voice. How are they still alive after all this? Survivors, Reyna said, a surge of hope rising in her chest. Let's go. They started to move faster, heading toward the survivors. As they got closer, Reyna saw more of them, Zorithians. The alien species she had only read about in reports. They were tall, with smooth, pale skin that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their faces were full of fear, their eyes wide as they ran from something. What are they running from? Kara asked. Suddenly, Reyna heard a sound, low, mechanical, and growing louder. A rumble in the distance. The black swarm. They're coming back, Reyna said. Move. The crew broke into a run, pushing forward to catch the survivors. As they closed the distance, they could see the Zorithians clearly now, thin, emaciated, desperate. Some were injured, limping. Others were carrying small children. Reyna reached them first. We're here to help, she shouted. One of the Zorithians looked at her, his eyes full of both fear and hope. He spoke, his voice shaky. You're human. You came? Reyna nodded. We came. Now let's get you to safety. But before they could move, the ground shook again. Something huge was moving beneath them. The black swarm was here. The ground trembled beneath Reyna's boots as she helped the last of the survivors up from the dirt. Her eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of the black swarm. The air was thick with smoke, and the smell of burning metal and sulfur made her stomach turn. But it wasn't the smoke that made her heart race, it was the sound. The low, mechanical hum grew louder, echoing across the ruined landscape. It wasn't just the wind. It was something else. The swarm, Kara said, her voice tight with fear. They're close. Reyna didn't have to look far to see them. A massive shape loomed on the horizon, dark and shifting like a shadow made of metal and smoke. It moved with terrifying speed, faster than anything they had ever seen. The black swarm had arrived. We need to move now, Reyna shouted. Get the survivors to the ship. We'll cover you. The survivors, weak and frightened, huddled together. Some were still too injured to walk, and others were too scared to move. Reyna saw the panic in their eyes. They had nowhere to run, and the black swarm was coming for them. But Reyna wasn't going to let that happen. Not on her watch. Malik, she shouted. Get those thrusters going. We need a way out. Malik ran toward the Aegis Dawn's engines, already working on getting the ship's thrusters ready for a quick takeoff. I'm on it, but it'll take a few minutes to power up. Kara turned to Reyna. What about the swarm? We can't fight them with just our guns. Reyna's jaw clenched, she knew that. But she wasn't about to let the black swarm take over. They couldn't afford to lose these people, not after everything they had been through. We hold them off for as long as we can, she said, gripping her rifle tighter. That's all we can do. The black swarm was getting closer. Reyna could see them now, huge, dark shapes moving across the landscape. They weren't just machines. They were something far worse, something alien. The first wave of the swarm arrived in the form of shadowy ships, flying low to the ground. They hovered over the ruins, their red lights scanning the area. The air was filled with the sound of their engines, a deep, vibrating hum that made the ground shake with every step. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, the ships dropped to the ground, releasing a swarm of smaller drones. The drones buzzed through the air like insects, their glowing red eyes scanning everything in sight. Reyna's crew opened fire, their weapons lighting up the darkness. The drones didn't flinch. They didn't slow down. They just kept coming, swarming toward the survivors, toward the ship, toward the humans. We need to fall back. Malik yelled from the ship. I've got the thrusters online, but we can't stay here much longer. Reyna's heart pounded in her chest. She had to think fast. They had to get the survivors to safety, and they had to do it now. Fall back, she shouted. Get to the ship. Move. The crew covered the survivors as they ran toward the ship, their rifles blazing. The drones were fast, but they were nothing compared to the sheer determination of the humans. Every shot Reyna fired was a warning, a signal that they weren't giving up. But the drones didn't stop. They kept coming faster now, swarming around the humans like a tidal wave. Reyna's rifle clicked empty. She didn't hesitate. She dropped it and drew her sidearm, firing again as the drones closed in. The sound of the blaster echoed through the ruins, but it wasn't enough to stop them. Kara was beside her, covering the rear. "We're almost there," she shouted, but her voice was filled with panic. "There's too many of them." Reyna glanced over her shoulder. The Aegis Dawn was still several hundred meters away. They weren't going to make it in time. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the ground. The swarm's ships had opened fire, and the blast sent debris flying in all directions. The shockwave knocked Reyna off her feet, sending her crashing into the dirt. She barely had time to react before the sound of the drones reached her ears again. They were closing in. She pushed herself to her feet, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "Keep moving," she shouted, grabbing a nearby survivor and pulling them along. They were almost there. The ship was in sight, the ramp still open, but the drones were getting closer, too close. The survivors were tiring, their legs giving out under the strain. They couldn't move fast enough. "Reyna," Malik shouted. "Hurry." Reyna reached the ship first, dragging the last of the survivors with her. She turned and fired her weapon again, trying to hold off the swarm for just a little longer. Then Kara made it to the ramp, and the others followed. Reyna was the last aboard, and just as she turned to run up the ramp, a drone's blaster shot grazed her side. She gritted her teeth, but didn't stop. She kept running, ignoring the pain. She made it to the ramp, stumbling as she entered the ship. Malik slammed the hatch shut, and the ship's engines roared to life. But they weren't safe yet. The Black Swarm wasn't done. They were already preparing for the next attack. "We're in the air, but we're not safe yet," Malik said, his voice tense. "We've got incoming." Reyna turned to face the crew. They had made it, but this wasn't over. "Get ready," she said, her voice steady. "The fight has just begun." The Aegis Dawn soared into the sky, its engines roaring as it broke through the smoke-filled atmosphere of Zorith. Inside the ship, the crew was silent, each person processing what had just happened. They had escaped the swarm, but barely. And the Black Swarm wasn't done yet. Reyna stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the dark horizon. The survivors were huddled in the back of the ship, trying to comfort each other. Their planet was burning, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "What's our status?" Reyna asked, her voice calm but sharp. Malik was working at the controls. "We're in the clear for now, but I can't say how long that will last. The swarm isn't far behind us." Kara stepped up beside Reyna, her face tight with worry. "How long do we have?" Reyna turned to her. "Not long enough." She glanced back at the survivors. "If we don't stop them, Zorith is gone. And so are we." Malik frowned. "We're not prepared for a full-on fight with the swarm. Their numbers are overwhelming." Reyna's jaw tightened. "Then we'll have to be smarter than them." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Black Swarm wasn't just a force of machines. They were an entire army, and they had the technology to crush anything in their path. But the humans had something else. They had the will to fight, to survive. "We can't just run," Reyna said, her voice growing stronger. "We have to make a stand." Kara nodded slowly. "You're right. But where?" Reyna turned back to the viewscreen, scanning the distant stars. There was only one place left, their only chance. We take them to the old outpost. It's the last stronghold of humanity in this sector. If we can reach it, we can make our stand there. Malik raised an eyebrow. "You think we can hold it? The swarm is too powerful." "We have to try," Reyna said firmly. "We're the last line of defense. If we don't stop them, no one else will." The crew was silent, but Reyna could feel their resolve hardening. There was no going back now. The journey to the outpost felt like it took forever. Every minute was filled with the tension of waiting, of knowing the swarm was getting closer. Malik kept the ship on course, while Kara prepared the weapon systems. Reyna stayed at the front of the bridge, watching the stars pass by. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time, and that time was running out. As they neared the outpost, the comms crackled to life. "This is Captain Lyanna of the outpost." A voice came through the speakers. "We've been monitoring your ship. The Black Swarm is coming. We've already begun preparations, but we need backup. Are you able to assist?" Reyna grabbed the comms. "Captain Lyanna, we're on our way. Hold tight." "Understood. Hurry." Captain Lyanna's voice was strained, but Reyna could hear the determination in it. The outpost was a tiny speck on the edge of the system. Once it had been a bustling hub of human activity, but now it was little more than a shadow of its former self. The Black Swarm had already destroyed most of the outer colonies, and the outpost was all that remained. Reyna turned to her crew. "We'll have to fight hard. The swarm isn't going to stop just because we're here." Kara nodded. "Ready as we'll ever be." Malik looked over at her. "I hope we can make it through." The ship closed in on the outpost. It was a small, heavily fortified station, with shields designed to protect it from smaller threats. But the Black Swarm wasn't small. They were coming in full force. "We've arrived," Malik called out, shutting down engines. Reyna's heart pounded. They had arrived. Now it was time to make their stand. As the crew disembarked from the ship, they could already hear the sounds of battle. The swarm was closing in. They had no time to waste. "We need to set up defenses now," Reyna ordered. The crew sprang into action, securing the entrances to the outpost, setting up barricades and loading weapons. The survivors were huddled inside, shaking with fear. Reyna couldn't blame them. She could feel the tension too. "We don't have much time," Kara said, her voice tight with fear. "They're almost here." "We're ready," Reyna said, though the words felt hollow in her throat. She didn't know if they were ready. She didn't know if any of them were ready for what was coming. The first wave of the Black Swarm hit the outpost with a deafening roar. The sky darkened as the drones and ships descended, their red eyes glowing in the night. The ground shook with each impact, and the air was filled with the sound of blasters firing, metal scraping, and the cries of battle. The crew fought back with everything they had, their weapons lighting up the darkness. Reyna's rifle roared as she fired, her aim steady despite the chaos around her. The drones fell, but there were more. Always more. "Keep fighting," Reyna shouted. "We can hold them off." But as the battle raged on, it became clear this wasn't going to be easy. The Black Swarm was relentless, and their numbers were too great. Then from above, the real threat arrived. A massive ship descended from the sky, its dark silhouette blocking out the stars. It was the heart of the Black Swarm, a massive, monstrous vessel that dwarfed everything else around it. The final wave was upon them. Reyna turned to her crew. "This is it," she said, her voice low and grim. "We make our last stand here. Hold your ground no matter what." The ground trembled beneath Reyna's boots as she looked up at the massive ship descending from the sky. It was like a dark mountain, blocking out the stars. The Black Swarm's flagship had arrived, and it was coming for them. "They're here," Kara said, her voice low, almost a whisper. She had her rifle ready, eyes scanning the sky for any sign of movement. "This is it. We're all in now." Reyna nodded, gripping her weapon tightly. The Aegis Dawn was gone, the crew was scattered across the outpost, and the survivors were huddled behind the barricades. The last line of defense stood before the massive, terrifying force of the Black Swarm. "Hold your ground," Reyna shouted, her voice echoing across the battlefield. "We fight until the last breath. We won't let them take Zorith." The crew exchanged determined glances. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they were human, and they wouldn't give up without a fight. The first wave came from the ground, a flood of smaller drones rushing toward them, their red eyes glowing in the darkness. The blasters rang out as the crew opened fire, but for every drone that fell, two more took its place. The battle was fierce, and the air was thick with smoke. the ground shaking with every explosion. "Keep shooting," Malik shouted, reloading his rifle. "Don't let them get too close." Reyna's rifle kicked in her hands as she fired at the incoming swarm. Her shots were precise, but the drones didn't stop. They kept coming, their metal bodies hard to slow down. But Reyna didn't falter. She knew what was at stake. Behind her, the survivors were trying to stay hidden, but Reyna knew they couldn't keep hiding forever. They had to fight too, or all would be lost. Then the flagship landed. A monstrous blast of wind and dust exploded outward, knocking Reyna and the others off their feet. The ground split open beneath them, and the outpost chipped like it was about to crumble. The flagship's massive doors opened, and more drones poured out, followed by larger, more heavily armed soldiers. These weren't just machines. They were warriors designed for war. The crew didn't hesitate. They charged forward, firing at the approaching swarm. The air was filled with the sounds of gunfire and explosions, the flashes of light from blasters lighting up the dark battlefield. "We can't let them get past the barricades," Kara yelled, slamming another round into her rifle. "Fall back if you have to, but don't let them breach the gates." Reyna ducked behind a fallen piece of debris, firing at the nearest enemy. She saw Kara in the distance, firing with deadly accuracy, and Malik was working on something at the base of the outpost. Reyna didn't know what it was, but she trusted him. The drones were getting closer, and the flagship was still unloading more soldiers. Reyna's heart raced. They couldn't hold out much longer. The swarm had the firepower to level the outpost within minutes. She needed a plan, something to turn the tide. "Malik," she shouted over the chaos. "What's your status?" "I'm setting up the defense cannons." Malik's voice crackled over the comms. "Just give me a few more seconds." Reyna nodded, turning back to the battlefield. She could see the survivors moving in small groups, some trying to make a run for safety, others bravely standing and helping the crew fight. Then the unexpected happened. From the sky, a large ship appeared. A human ship, one she recognized from the fleet. The Ember Dawn, a long-lost warship that had been thought destroyed, was back. The crew didn't know how it had survived, but seeing it now, with its weapons powered up and ready, was a blessing. The Ember Dawn unleashed a barrage of firepower, its weapons lighting up the sky. The Black Swarm's drones were torn apart in an instant. The ship fired again, targeting the flagship itself. Reyna felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. "We've got reinforcements," Kara shouted, her eyes wide with relief. But the fight was far from over. The flagship's shield absorbed most of the damage, and it retaliated with a devastating energy blast that shook the ground beneath them. The crew was thrown off their feet once again, and the outpost's walls cracked under the force. Reyna didn't hesitate. She scrambled to her feet, firing at the nearest swarm soldier. "Get to cover," she yelled, pulling Kara back behind the barricades. "We need to take down that flagship," Malik shouted from the distance. "It's the heart of their army. Without it, they'll fall apart." Reyna glanced at the massive ship, then back at her crew. They were already giving everything they had, but they needed something more. Something to push them over the edge. "Malik, are the cannons ready?" Reyna asked, her voice urgent. "Almost," Malik called back. "Just hold on a little longer." Reyna took a deep breath. They had one chance, and they couldn't waste it. "Kara, cover me. I'm going to make my way to Malik." Kara nodded. "You've got it. Go." Reyna ran across the battlefield, dodging incoming fire as she moved. She reached Malik just as he finished powering up the cannons. "It's ready," Malik said, his voice grim. "This is our shot." Reyna took a breath and pressed the button. The cannons fired, launching a massive energy blast at the flagship. The blast hit the ship's shield and exploded with a deafening roar. The shield cracked, and then, with a burst of light, the flagship's engines overloaded, sending it into a tailspin. "Direct hit," Malik shouted. The flagship went down in flames, crashing to the ground in a fiery explosion. The remaining drones faltered, their command ship gone. "We did it," Reyna said, her voice barely a whisper. But there was no time to celebrate. The remaining swarm forces scattered, retreating into the darkness. The battle was over, but it had come at a great cost. Reyna turned to her crew, all of them standing in the wreckage of the outpost. The survivors were safe for now, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. "We won this battle," Reyna said, her voice strong. "But the war is far from over. Humanity will stand. We'll fight until the very end." And with that, they turned to face whatever came next.